Okay, so I was gone for a couple days, and this video I'm replying to was made, and I didn't understand what it was about, but Twit from Uranus explained it was because of, my implicit in my statement about it being, you know, weak to use God. Now, here I will clarify, but I'm not backing off. Okay, yeah, I think there's a weakness involved, potentially, in this part. That doesn't mean an individual is weak, because what I said is you could use God as a shortcut to avoid actually thinking about your life and introspecting. But an individual might believe in God and still introspect. They might believe in God and believe that God wants them to introspect. It might be linked in their mind, right? So on an individual level, there's no criticism just because you happen to believe in God. And if you're feeling defensive and you think I'm talked about you, maybe it's because you don't introspect, because I mentioned that. And if you do introspect and do the hard work of actually thinking through the things in your life in detail, then the fact that you believe God, it could be for some other reason or whatever. But regardless, it wouldn't be a weakness. On the other hand, just because it's easy and is a shortcut, I gave reasons why that might be beneficial. Some people do this late in life. They literally might not have time to go think through their things, or maybe they've pretty much got over their problems without a lot of introspection. They've moved on. They don't need to burden their current relationship, for example, with a lot of introspection. So part of maturity is learning that even though it is better to introspect and think stuff through, and I personally would like to do it to the day I die, I could see that there are mitigating circumstances. However, I'm still going to compare them one to one and say that you're better off in a spiritual way and in a strong way. And it's not necessarily better just because it's harder, quite the opposite. Some things we believe are better because they're simpler. Newton's laws, Kepler's way of explaining motion in the solar system. We prefer that over Ptolemy's way because it's simpler, because it makes sense to use the simplest equivalent solution, and ultimately often such solutions you find aren't quite equivalent, and you get a better lack of principle to it as well. But really, what it has going for it is simplicity. But yes, in this case, I'm saying that the hard work of introspection, if it's successful in the end, is a better way to go. And I think it is possible to use God as a means to motivate yourself to introspect. It is also possible, and I was talking about this anecdote, which I'll stick by, to avoid thinking of things in detail, um, by basically letting God carry the weight. And I consider it slightly gimmicky if somebody uses religion that way, but I also see why, if you didn't have another way, good. Because you need to become a good person, you do need to get rid of that baggage. And if you can't, or you don't have time, or you don't know how to process that baggage, then maybe you should just kind of dump it in a trolley and drag it along and call it God. Now, if that offends some people, I don't make statements about an individual that is also a generalization. I made a statement about an individual that seems to me to have found God as a way of avoiding a certain amount of introspection, painful introspection, or even non-painful, or maybe it's painful and I don't see why, but just that, like the act of introspection, not things that necessarily would be. It's like you go up in a scary attic. You find a lot of non-scary things, but they all seem scary, because the attic's scary. So they just don't want to look in there, you know. And a lot of the stuff is fun looking through an attic. It's not really so spooky. Um, well, so much for the metaphors. But anyway, when I'm talking about an individual, it's a particular individual. So it's if you really want to differ with it, you'd have to say, no, it's impossible for an individual to use religion that way. Or then you could do a hybrid of that and say, well, you shouldn't generalize. That's not why most people do it, or whatever. But I did make the qualifications. On the other hand, I'm fine with a video like that. It's hard to listen to, but if that is an expression of Twit from Uranus's opinion, then that's fine with me. So that's my clarification.